Hey guys, we're going to start the next session. Great. So a quick introduction to Alfonso, and he can talk more about himself as well. So Alfonso is actually a fellow LBS MBA, but 2014, so recently graduated. But he's got 12 plus years in technology and telecommunications from Nokia and Alcatel-Lucent. He also has a master's in computer science. He has held quite a few roles in various different startups, including Akuben, CityMapper, Pixavita, Clout, ITs, and Magic 10. So he's got quite a bit of product management experience as well, in which he will be sharing that with you now.
Hi. Just to a little bit understand who am I speaking with. Are you guys all full-time MBAs?
No.
No? Okay. Where are you guys? Like, what are your courses? What are you doing? Alumni. Oh, alumni? Okay. Okay. Good. All right. So not everybody is a SB nor is an LBS. Okay. And what about your background? I don't know, banking, consulting, consulting. Okay. Anybody with a technical background? Okay. Oh, that's good. Okay. Cool. So yeah, you already heard about this. So this is kind of like, I don't know, as having a technical background, it's very easy to love Dilbert. So I don't know if you can understand, if this resonates with you. But like, you know, it's as if you're a technologist and a philosopher all in one. That's pretty much the idea, right? So Mo is the most strong. So this is the kind of idea, right? So basically, what the reason we are here is, and the reason I think why you are here, is because there are a number of trends that are going on, right? This is from KBCB, is one of the most famous venture capitalist firm. You know, cost of global compute cost trend is going down, storage is going down, and this is a logarithmic scale, by the way, right? If you would see it in a normal scale, you would see kind of a hockey stick. And same with bandwidth; those are all logarithmic. And smartphone cost declining, and cloud computing is going down, right? So we see all these trends, and we see quite a growth in the startup environment. And I guess more and more people are interested in this kind of ideas. So this is kind of the way I look at the technology product manager, right? You're supposed to have 1 foot in the business and 1 foot into development or into the technical side of things. So resonating with what Dan said in the previous session, it's really, really important to know how to speak on both ends, right? You need to be able to capture, basically in essence, what you do as a business person that wants to be also a product manager. You have to be able to capture the essence of the requirements from the business side and be able to transmit this to the developer so that it becomes, you know, into their language. It kind of sounds weird when you think about it, because you would be like, okay, why would this be a problem, right? And it actually is a problem because of all the things that Dan already underlined, like in terms of priorities, in terms of this kind of thing. Those are really kind of things that require somebody to understand at the same time both the business aspect and the technology aspect. So what, in my opinion, are really traits of a good product manager? So you really have to understand, and that again resonates with what Dan said before, what's feasible, and challenge your customer, meaning like the person that commits the work to you from a business side. You really need to understand what can be done by when. This is kind of part of your role, and even if you don't know, you don't have to know all the APIs, or you don't have to know. In fact, probably you know very little of this. But based on experience, you have a sense of what's doable, especially time-wise, right? And in terms of challenging your customer, you really want to understand what is it that they're asking and by when. Is it realistic? You really don't want to promise something that is not that you cannot deliver, and at the same time, of course, you need to stretch your development team, right? So it's kind of a balancing act. This is probably the most difficult you have to learn how to say no. Specifically, we will see later what's the product development phase. You have to learn that once development starts and the requirements have been frozen, that's it. You have to stick to it. Because the worst thing that can happen is when you keep changing, and especially in an hackathon. I mean, that's probably devastating, right? What Dan said is absolutely true. If you change requirements after you said, okay, that's what we want to do, let's start. Basically, for sure, in an hackathon, you're not going to get out of it alive. And in real life, it's even worse, right? I mean, I'm sure you heard probably in the news, like product XYZ has been pushed again for another year or stuff like that. All of these things happen because of this. And basically, it's kind of, again, a very, very balancing act, right? So you need to be, there are certain things that are important. So there are technology trends. So speed is important. If today you come up with something that you want to produce, if it takes you too long to produce it, it's going to be obsolete when it comes out. And at the same time, if you expect it to be too quick, you're probably not going to be, it's not going to be of good quality. So you again need to balance between, okay, I need to do it fast enough so it's still relevant, and I don't need to change specs while I work on it. But at the same time, it has to be realistic. And believe me, to say no to your boss is not easy, and this is probably the hardest thing that a good product manager should learn how to do. And then protect your team. This is, again, really, really important. You personally are responsible for all the failures, but success is always thanks to your team. So basically, there is no reward. So you really have to take the blame for anything that goes wrong, but of course you have to thank your team when everything goes right. Then this is your interface. So this is like the half of the brain that talks to the business side. The part of the brain that talks on the tech side, it's, again, this is really important. Don't define how you want something to be developed. You need to be able to trust your team. Just say what you want to be done and by when. So once you set those two principles, you really need to be able to have a team that you can trust. So either, if you're lucky enough to select your team, select people that you can really blindly trust, or basically learn how to trust them, learn their skills, learn their abilities. And this is, again, what Dan, and it's interesting to see both sides, right? Because Dan is more of a developer, and he said it pretty much straight out, right? He said, don't come and say, I'm the business guy, I know what you should do. That's really wrong. This is not going to go anywhere. So you really want to trust them. And of course, there is a lot of creativity in development, believe it or not. So you really want them to be fulfilled in their job. So you really want to leave this creativity angle to their job. And then something I forgot that he mentioned, which is absolutely important, is priorities. Absolutely. This is totally true. So everything priority one means that nothing is priority one. So you need to learn what are the things. Like just, for example, recently I was putting a new website online, right? So we had a migration issue. There was an existing website and the new one that was being developed, and we needed to bring it live, right? Simple. So we tried one day, and we worked for 8 hours, and we didn't manage to go live for a number of different issues, because the developer were working on a simple, on a slightly different version. So basically, the platform of development was not exactly aligned to the live platform. Again, my fault, right? Remember? And then the first day we tried for 8 hours, didn't work. Second day, again, we worked for 6 more hours. At some point, we put the live website offline, and we tried to put the new one. So for a time, for a few hours, for a couple of hours, it was like, we are upgrading, come back soon. The usual stuff that you've seen probably in your experience as a customer. But then at some point, I realized that, okay, we're not going to be able to go live with the full specs. And it was my call to say, okay, do we have everything needed? And can we go live with a subset of a requirement? Or do we have to postpone it again and then create more problem. I mean, not without going into many detail, but like it's your code, right? And about yourself, you really have to be curious as a product manager. Be aware of the strengths, apps, sites, because you never know, where your next idea may come from. So you need to be able to, again, going back to probably point one, to understand what's feasible, you need to be aware of what's going on, right? And by the way, I should have said this first thing. I'd really be happy if you guys intervene and ask me questions, because I know all this stuff, and your question will bring up more interesting things rather than what I have to say, I think. So, right. So now you know how you want to behave. Everything is ready. You have a team. What do? So, web, mobile, desktop. There is a choice, and it's an important choice because there is always a trade-off, right? So this is an interesting side thing on the side. I don't know if you guys remember, but when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone in 2007, there was no SDK. SDK stands for Software Development Kit, and this is the software that allows developer to build software for your platform, right? And that was not available. Why? Because Steve Jobs, for two reasons. First of all, because for the last, 10 years, I'm not sure, HTML5 has promised to disrupt the world of software development. So everybody thought, Steve Jobs thought that there would be no need for native apps because HTML5 would do everything you needed to know inside the browser, right? And this is an incredible, okay, I don't want to dwell into this because it's again a side story, but basically 15 years ago, it was all about the operating system, right? It was either Windows or Mac, and Windows was prominent, 95%. One of the reasons why Macintosh now has been rising as a platform is because the platform is not anymore the operating system, but it became the browser. Now everything runs in your browser. If you think about it, probably 95% of you, the only native apps you use on your computer are Outlook and Office, right? You think, is it correct? You use many other native apps, right? Everything else is in your browser, right? This used not to be the case 15 years ago. And so this trend made Steve Jobs convince Steve Jobs that there would be no need for native apps. Why? Because, of course, native app can create problems. Everybody's familiar with the story that 15 years ago, 10 years ago, Windows kept rebooting, and it was problems. It wasn't a strong platform. And Steve Jobs, being the perfectionist he was, didn't want to have this on his platform. He said, if I don't allow native apps, nothing will ever going to happen to my platform, right? The platform will always be fine, it was stable. But of course, basically, this is a myth. Like the necessity for native app prevailed, and the SDK was created. So, in terms of product lifetime, this is true for every kind of product, not just in terms of development. You have four phases: conceive, design, realize, and service. When you go strictly into technology and development, you have conceive, ideation. If any of you is familiar with the lean startup approach, Steve Blank's, the get out of the building idea. So you really want to talk to your customer, and you want to build everything you do around your customer. Don't really, it's really, really, really hard to know best. Again, probably one of the few people that knew he knew best was Steve Jobs, when he said, no, everybody's wrong, I know what you need. Other than that, probably 95% of the rest of us, the normal people, we have to ask our customer. Okay, design, wireframing, meaning creating a design, creating a sketch of what your web or native app will look like. There are various kind of tools. There are maybe more advanced tools online, like Balsamiq. There are many others. If you're not familiar with those, don't worry. You can use PowerPoint. If you're not familiar with that, don't worry. You can use pen and paper. Basically, the idea is you have to have an idea of what you want at the end of the day. It has to be clear. Thinking like, go back. Remember what we said a couple of slides ago. You really want to freeze requirements, and this is part of it. If you're not clear of what you want, your developer doesn't know what you want, and things will go bad. Second step, again, this is not only related to Hackathon. This is more of a generic thing. You go into user interface and user experience design, and there are experts for these things. You want to talk to expert when you do it in a real life cycle. And then technical analysis is something I personally do. I have a computer science background, but I think it's important as a product manager to do this phase. So what is a technical analysis? It's basically you have to explain in English, real English, not code, right? Real English, what you want, but it has to be a kind of English that, if you want, a computer would understand, if this makes sense. So basically, do this 1,000 times. If this happens, then do that. If that happens, do this. Of course, you don't have to go to the nitty-gritty, but it has to be the logic. The logic of what you want has to be completely clear, so that the developer can then create the code around it, making sure that they completely understand your requirements. Basically, again, the idea is make sure your requirements are 100% clear. Share with your developers, make sure that they understand. Before you start actual coding, this phase, design phase, must be 100% clear. Then you go into realization. Of course, there is a development and test phase. You cycle, beta testing. I mean, I'm sure all of this is pretty simple, right? And then after you realize it, you want to service it, so there's going to be new releases and stuff like that. Another thing that is important for a product manager is to learn the lingo, because again, you have to be able to speak with developers. So these are a very small subset of kind of stuff that you would probably want to know as a product manager. Tell me if you want me to go through it, if it's relevant, not relevant, all obvious, you know them all, you want to know. As you see on the third column, some of the acronym I don't even remember myself, so I wrote them down. But the one on the left I should remember. Do you think it's useful if I go through them? Yeah? Okay, cool. Right, so responsive. Responsive is the buzzword of the day. Responsive refers to websites. A website which is responsive means that it's developed once and can be equally visible. Not equally visible. It adapts its layout to different screens. So if you watch it on a desktop, which is a landscape form factor, is going to be shown as a landscape. And if you watch it on a mobile device, which is more portrait, is going to, and a smaller screen, so the real estate of the screen is smaller, is going to adapt. So, I mean, you've seen it thousands of times. The same website, the same website on the desktop has many columns, and on the mobile, it's all in one column, right, for example. Not all websites which are available for mobile and desktop are responsive. Sometimes they are developed specifically for mobile, right? So again, it's a trade-off. If you can, most likely today you start developing a responsive website. Probably if you scale up, if you get big, if you get capital, if you get revenues, you might think of doing specific mobile development. But at the beginning, you probably want to be, you want to start responsive. And I mean, all of those are buzzwords, so I won't say another buzzword, but mobile first, right? So in the last few years, I don't know, I'm sure some of you are familiar with White Plan, maybe, yeah? If you go on White Plan, at least last time I've been on the website on the laptop, it says, it's a static page, it says, this is what we do, download our app. That means they're mobile first. They don't have a web page, they don't have a website, they focus on mobile. That's the platform of choice. So they don't have web developers. They only have mobile developers. SEO, search engine optimization. There are again experts that deal with this kind of stuff. It's basically the art of learning the cat and mouse game between you and Google. The Google PageRank algorithm is the algorithm that decides when you search a certain keyword, what goes into the first page, what goes into second page, and so on. As you understand, being on the first page is incredibly useful for your business. It boosts your business incredibly. And SEO is the art of trying to reverse engineer what Google algorithm, how Google algorithm calculates who should go first, and do and edit your website accordingly. So this is incredibly important from a marketing perspective, because the next thing, which is PPC, pay-per-click, is what you will know, right? You know, advertisement. You pay Google so that when they look for whatever is your idea, I don't know, like car park London, you come up as a first result because you paid for. But of course, that is a continuous payment. While SEO, if you do SEO well, it's a long story. I mean, everybody will compete, right? It's a race. It's kind of nuclear race, right? All the websites will compete to be at the top. But if you do SEO well, the theory goes that it then, in the long run, will cost you less than actually pay-per-click. You do both. SMM, social media marketing. These links back to SEO. In order to be up in the ranking of SEO, you need to have a social media marketing strategy. You need to be on all the social media platform. You need to have a blog, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Google+, Facebook, you name it. HTML5 is this fantastic thing where HTML, which as Dan showed you in the previous session, is kind of a static thing, right? It's kind of like think of it as in the most basic form, right? Think of it as another way to store a document. You know, Microsoft Word as its way to store a document so that it looks each line has a different font, has a different color, blah blah blah. HTML is just another way, and it's an interoperable way. This was the original HTML. We're talking about 15, 20 years ago, right? HTML5 is the latest and greatest evolution of HTML, where basically you can do much more programming things. MVP, you probably know, minimum viable product, is basically the idea that you want to create and you want to trickle down your idea to what are the basics in order to show it to your customer and understand if there is interest. So don't look at all the bell and whistle. This is what you want to do during a hackathon. You want to create a minimum viable product. Frameworks, basically in this context means sometimes you don't develop directly into the programming language that you want to, for example, for a native app, you don't develop directly into that programming language. You use a framework to simplify things. Because again, connecting to Dan, the higher level you are, the more effective you are in coding. And frameworks are even a level up compared to programming languages. API, I think Dan explained it. .NET is a Microsoft-specific framework. XML is a markup language that is used in certain APIs to transfer information between different elements, different things. If you talk to an API, you probably will pass information to them using XML. HTML we know. Then on the right, so LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Is basically where probably, I don't want to say a percentage because I don't know it, but a lot of websites run on this stack. Basically, instead of having a Windows server, they have a Linux server. The Apache is a web server, MySQL is the database, and PHP is the programming language. And probably, I want to say vast majority of websites, of big websites today, they run on LAMP, not only because it's free. I mean, it's a free stack, so that's interesting for that reason. SQL is a form of database. We'll talk about CMS later, and the other one are, I think, maybe too technical to go through right now. Right, so this is kind of a way that I want to impose on you the idea that there are certain things which are myth, and you shouldn't go after them. So in the Middle Age, there was a unicorn. I actually seen this in one museum. It was actually supposed to be the proof that unicorn exists. Because, well, it's the core of unicorn, right? But of course, it comes from somewhere else. And this is a bit forced, but let's say in the 20th century we have this myth. In the 21st century we have this myth, which is write once and run anywhere. That's the idea. The idea that you can write code only once and then it runs on any platform, on any sorts of operating system. You can write code that runs on Android and iOS and even Microsoft Windows Mobile. That's not true. That's a myth. You know, this is so come across it, like learning the hard way. Long story short, you have to choose what you want to do. If it's web, it's web. If it's a native app for iOS, it's a native app for iOS. And if it's a native app for Android, it's a native app for Android. And you have to have the right skills for the right measure. So in terms of development, again, maybe this is useful for you guys when you want to connect to the right developers. You know, for iPhone, you want to develop in Objective-C, C or C++, and JavaScript as well. And for Android, you want to either code in Java or C and C++. So long story short, you can summarize this as be very clear in your mind before you start in which platform you're interested into and find the right developers that can help you in that. Don't think that they are all interchangeable because that's absolutely not the case. Right, so this is more interesting for the people that are interested more in web development, content management systems. So today, they are all the rage. The three main CMSs are WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal. WordPress, as you can see, is by far the most common one. Basically, what they do is, again, the same story all over again. Really, developing is all the same thing, right? It's the aim to be as productive as possible, to create as much as possible with as little coding as possible. So what a content management system does is that it creates some sort of framework, and then yes, some sort of plugins and themes, so that you can simply, for example, you remember Dan spoke about CSS, that gives you the kind of layout and the kind of look and feel of the website, where the answer of WordPress to that is having themes. Instead of deciding your own thing one by one, like how big is my font, what's the color, those are all kind of, they all take time, right, those decisions. Well, just browse free themes if you do a web app and if you do it with WordPress. There are over 2,000 themes, and I'm sure that by now it's probably much bigger. And you can find something that probably look exactly as you want it or close enough so that you don't have to redevelop it from scratch. Same thing for plugins. It's kind of similar. I'm being oversimplistic right here, but it's similar to APIs. If you want to, for example, know where your customer comes from, which country, because you want to directly face them with your own language, because you understand that that's very important to bring about stickiness to your product, then there is a plugin for WordPress that does it. So that with very few lines, you can integrate it, then the website will look up the IP of the user, tell it to your website, and your website will then present itself in the right language. As long as you have, of course, you have to have all the language on the back. Okay, so this is a slide again to give us a sense of HTML5. So the reason why HTML5 is a myth is because it's depending on the platform, right? Here, those columns represent different web browsers. So you have on the left Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, then Safari, iOS Safari, because of course iOS Safari on a Mac is different than Safari on iOS, Opera, and so on and so forth. So, and this is the API to get access to a camera. So think you want to do an app that can access the camera because you want to take a picture. You could do it in HTML5. The standard says you could do it in HTML5, but this is the truth, right? Chrome can do it, hence the green bar. iOS Safari cannot, hence the red bar. So yes, in theory, you could do a very powerful app that looks almost native in HTML5, not in reality. Why? Because HTML5 is an ongoing standard. It's not been frozen yet, and for that reason, not all the vendors have completely aligned themselves to the standard. And also because they don't have to, right? They don't. If Apple says no, we don't think it's going to add value to our browser, they don't have to. Nobody will force them, right? It's a business decision. Okay, so we are kind of wrapping up here. So what are the most common languages? This is just to give you a sense of what successful websites are using. So you see that JavaScript is really, in terms of website, right? We're not talking native apps here. In terms of website, JavaScript is really predominant in terms of front side. And in terms of backend, Dan already explained you what's the difference between front-end and back-end. So front-end, it's code that runs in the browser. Back-end is code that runs in the cloud. And you can see that back-end is much more variated, right? There is a lot of PHP going on. And by the way, all the content management system that I mentioned before, so Drupal, WordPress, and Joomla, they all underneath run in PHP. And you can see that there is a lot of C++. And by the way, maybe this shows you something that it's maybe it wasn't obvious, that there is no one technology for backend, right? Why? Because again, remember, it's all about being productive, right? It's all about being productive. So the thing that you can do with a very, very high level language, you do in a very high level language. Why? Because it's faster to do it that way. But then if there are certain bits where you cannot use a high level language, then you have to revert back to a lower level language, hence C and C++. And then, of course, it's more time consuming. One of the reasons why you would do that is not just because a higher level language doesn't provide you that ability, it's maybe because you realize, you learn that that particular piece of code needs to be extremely optimized for cost reasons. Of course, today you can rent on Amazon Web Services, AWS, which is the most common cloud, one of the most common cloud platforms. Netflix run on AWS, for example. You can pay as much. I mean, if you pay as much, you will have as much computing power as you want. But of course, it's expensive, right? So there are certain tools that developers have called profilers that allow them to understand where does your code spend the most time. So if you have millions, maybe not millions, but tens of thousands of rows of code, you will then you can run them through these profilers and understand that, okay, this procedure, even though it's only 100 lines, 50% of the time that CPU spent on all your code is spent on this procedure. Then it makes sense to scrap it at a high level language and redevelop it in a much lower level language to be optimized. Does it make any sense at all? Yeah. Cool. One other thing that I like about this page is that it shows you some of the problem that really, really big sites had. So probably, I wish you all the best, but probably it's not going to be your problem during the hackathon. You're not going to come across a problem like, you have 1 billion users the first day. But if you do, like Facebook does, then you create your own database, hence HBase Cassandra, right? Or if you're Google, you create your own database, hence Bigtable. You see that Bigtable is only used for Google and YouTube because it's been developed by Google. Specifically because they have so specific problems that they need to develop their own thing, right? So this is just, I think it's just interesting. I'm passionate about this. I don't think it really is exactly relevant for your first weekend of coding, but if you go into this and if you're serious about being a startup, having a startup and being a tech entrepreneur, you will come across this problem, right? You will have to choose together with the developers, but not without your developers and not only the developers. You have to be involved in this decision. You will have to say, okay, do I need an SQL database or a NoSQL database? And this is completely different, right? And you need to know pros and cons, and you need to understand why you're doing this. And by the way, something that an example that I want you to bring is from a classmate, Kesha Malani. He has his own startup now called Power of You. Hi, Kesha. And he actually is not a developer, and he learned the hard way that he needs to have some basic understanding. He needs to be able to sketch an MVP by himself. So I met him a few weeks back, and he was telling me how at the beginning he thought he would be able to just get developers, but it's expensive, right? Developers don't come for free, and their time doesn't come for free. So if you want to test something out, especially because there is all these different levels, right? You can be as high level as you want, and certain things are quite reasonable, right? I'm sure all of you can sketch together a basic WordPress site, right? If you put your time, you're all smart guys. I actually chuckled when Dan said, maybe you think you're not smart enough. Obviously, he doesn't spend a lot of time with MBAs. I'm sure you do think you're smart enough. It's just a matter of choosing how to spend your time. So if you spend some of your time, you would be able to put something together, right? And also coding at a very high level, it's very logical. It takes some time, of course, but Google is your friend. Every time you have a problem, you can find somebody else that had a similar problem. You ask it on Google, and there is a website that will have other developers saying, oh, you could try this, you could do that. Basically, it's a bit of trial and error, but at the basic level, you can sketch something together. And I, again, strongly urge you, as Dan said, to learn at least the basic if you're serious about it, because it's going to be super handy, right? Right, so before going to start manufacturing, this is where I work right now. I wanted to ask you if you have any question about this. Yes?
Now, when you said it's very useful for an entrepreneur to learn the basic, are you talking about the front end, right? Not the back end?
No, everything. So, of course, you're not going to be able to create something that rivals with the Googles and YouTube. But at least if you can stick something together in PHP, it's a very simple language. It's something that you could learn. There are lots of tutorials nowadays. If you're serious about it, you know. Nowadays, actually, I teach undergrads in another school for business, right? Entrepreneurship. We have an entrepreneurship course with Sarah Manufacturing, and it's super interesting because you see them. They have all this business plan together, and they're like, well, you know, we just have a website, and then this is our target market, and 1% of the target market will come to us, so we're rich, right? It's not exactly that, right? So the idea is if you manage to put something together, you will have the opportunity to show it to your potential customer without paying developers. So if the developer, if your developer is your co-founder and they're happy to go through this journey, maybe this is less of a need. But unfortunately, first 10, I can tell you that you are kind of a bit in a pickle as an entrepreneur without the technical background, because entrepreneur with a technical background, they don't think they need business expertise, right? I'm not going to argue if it's true or not. Obviously, I mean, I have an MBA. Hopefully, it's wrong. I hope so. but basically, the harsh reality is that they don't agree until they bump into it, right? They bump their nose into it, and then you're there, you're at the right time, you're at the right meeting. They've been frustrated because they realize that whatever mistake they've made, you show that you could help them that way, and then you team up, right? But this is a process. Until then, what do? If you learn the basics and you start sketching around, first of all, you gain their respect, which is super interesting, super important, because you need to be able to talk to them. And if they think you're completely on a different level, yeah, you're completely out in the clouds, and you have no idea, they will not respect you. If they don't respect you, they don't want to work with you. So that's one reason why you want to be at least able to speak their own language. And also because if you are not lucky enough to have a technical founder at the beginning, you want to still move on, right? And the way you move on is only by being able to sketch together. It's going to be ugly, it's going to be pointless, but he's going to teach you something. And that's the whole point. Yes. Sorry, no, in the back.
On that note, if you are a business person, which programming language do you think would give you the most credibility with your tech?
Super interesting question. I don't know. I think my instinct tells me probably PHP and JavaScript. That's my first instinct because, of course, as you can see from the table, and this is again. Let me make this clear. We are talking about web development, right? If you're native, you have to be learning either Objective-C or C++ or Java, depending on the platform you want. But the aim of the game is not to learn to be a coder. The aim of the game is to learn to speak to coders. So whatever you learn is going to be good enough, right? If you decide, and my suggestion would be, go towards web, because again, remember the slide is a myth. It's not going to run as good as a native app, but it's going to show on a mobile, right? So if you create, for example, with WordPress, so going back, right? So if you start with WordPress, I promise you, you can have a simple page up and running. There's not going to be any logic behind, right? It's not going to be able to connect you to your friends and do this and do that. But there's going to be some basic logic. At least, for example, the way it looks is going to be what you more or less want by simple fact that you use the right theme. And it's going to take you a few hours. I promise you. All of you are smart enough to, if you're here, to be able to do that, right? And then you will start to understand. Okay, now I need some stuff that links the various sections, right? I need maybe to push something in a database. I need this to do that way. And then you will start to face PHP. You will have to, the way you code into WordPress is with PHP. And hence my answer. That's my best guess. Yes, of course. By the way, yeah, Nikita is a developer, so you should listen to him, not to me.
So, like in terms of what technologies you should pick for your product, is the answer would be go with the technologies that you will not have trouble hiring for. So at some point you will need to hire developers to work on your product, and there are certain technologies that are easier to hire than the others. And also you need to do your research if you want to hire developers on site. It might be too expensive, so you might want to outsource your development somewhere else. And there are several destinations for outsourcing. So you can outsource it to Eastern Europe, you can outsource it to India, you can outsource it to Asia. So there is also, Eastern Europeans, they're known to be good in PHP. Indian, they might be also diverse with the Python and Ruby. So it's also think of with whom you're gonna work with later. Know which technologies these guys are using, and think of the costs that are involved in hiring people for certain technologies. Maybe it's going to be cheaper to hire a PHP developer in London versus to find a Python developer in London. So you might want to go with PHP rather than Python. There is costs and people involved in terms of picking the technologies you wanna develop.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes actually a lot of sense. And actually, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to put when I prepared the slides. This is why I wanted to show you this, by the way, and I forgot about it, because this gives you an idea. Obviously, it's demand and supply, right? So obviously, you will expect to find easily people that know JavaScript, and probably easily people that know PHP because it's so common. So that's absolutely the case. You had a question? Yes? Yeah.
You didn't talk about analytics. I was wondering what you think of Google Analytics and Mixpanel and Kissmetrics, those kind of things as a project manager.
Yeah, so analytics are absolutely essential. And you're familiar, do you know what Google Analytics is? Yes, no? Yeah, some of you don't. So Google Analytics basically, it's a simple way to, not a simple way, it's actually a very complex product, but basically it's a way for you to track what happens on your website, right? So you can track, actually is a very good point, I didn't put it on the slides, but you can simply visualize what happens on your website. For example, this has happened in the last project I was working on, right? So we had a website, and it was written in 14 languages. And when we launched only in 2 languages because we had a deadline. We wanted to be ready to show the new website because it was much more sleek and much more interesting for us from a customer perspective than the previous one. But we didn't have time to prepare the 12 languages before start, right? So we launched on 2 languages. And then after a couple of days, I was looking at Google Analytics, and I saw something astonishing in how simple and immediate the information was, right? So I don't have a page to show you, but think about it as a flow chart, right? So you can see literally you can see a stream goes into your home page, and then you can see how they progress, right? So for example, do they all go to the how it works page? Maybe. Or do they all go to the whatever purchase page? I don't know. You can follow the way the customer journey is through your website and what the conversion rate is, right? So in my example, what I've noticed is when I was breaking down for languages, I could see immediately, right on my face, I could see all this flow coming from Russia and dropping out? Well, because we didn't have a Russian language. But that told me the first language I had to develop was Russian, of all the other 9 languages that we didn't have. If I didn't have Google Analytics, I would only like lick my finger, put it in the air, and I would say, I don't know, whatever. But like that, I had the information right in front of me, right? And another super important aspect of Google Analytics is you can see conversion rate, right? So if you think about your website as a funnel, right? A sales. If it's an e-commerce, think about Airbnb, think about Booking.com. Their website is a funnel, right? It's a sales funnel. Everybody lands on the first page, but there is a certain percentage that goes to the listing page. There is another percentage of that number that goes on and so on until they pay, right? So by analytics, you can actually understand what percentage goes from one to the other, and then you can do something which is very, very important, which is called A/B testing. Anybody heard about A/B testing? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay, so for the ones who don't, A/B testing means today, when you go to all the major websites, if you go to Google, Facebook, Booking, all the major websites, no 2 people see the exact same website. Every single of you is actually a guinea pig for a slightly different version. So there is an interesting article that I once read on the technical blog of Booking.com that showed how by doing small changes in the size of the listing of a property, how making it a little bit bigger changed the conversion rate. So because every single page is a step of a sales funnel, you want to increase that conversion. And the way you do it is do minor changes that make sense. You go through tests, and if you've done all the statistics here, if you understand what I'm talking about, you have to have a statistically significant test. And then once you have statistically significant results of the conversion, you understand that, okay, this small change, this small tweak actually increased the conversion rate of my sales funnel. Hence, I'm going to ditch the previous version and I'm going to use the first version. So this is another thing that as an entrepreneur, as a business entrepreneur, you have to understand, because you have to think about all these different tries. And there is always a trade-off, right? So in that particular case, in the Booking.com example, by having too large picture, the load time of the page became too heavy, and people were dropping for that reason. By having too small page, it wasn't enticing enough because people couldn't really see what it was. So they went for a middle ground where it was big enough for you to understand how the hotel was looking like, but then small enough to be fast to download. So this is kind of the thing. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, so I was wondering if you could compare some with each other, because a lot of people say Google Analytics is not good, and I don't know why. It's free, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've been using Google Analytics so far, and I don't think I have enough experience to tell you to compare different ones. So far, I've been happy with Google Analytics. I know there are other solutions in the market, but I don't have enough experience to say, oh, this is better than the other. And I think, especially at the beginning, you will go with a free solution, which is, again, think about what Nikita said. It's the same thing, right? If you go with Google Analytics, at least at the beginning, you will have a lot of experience around you that can help you. So if you don't know how to do something, you can find it easy in Google, or you can find somebody else that has seen the experience. Of course, I'm sure that big websites, they have their own tools, but at the beginning, I think Google Analytics should be able to satisfy your needs, at least for the beginning. Right. So just one slide about Star Manufacturing.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is where I work at the moment. We are a venture development firm, so we help startups succeed. We do it in different ways, helping raising funds, helping finding the right developer for your needs, helping you outsource, and we also have education arm. We do this course now with undergrads and soon with executive education. So if you're interested about this kind of stuff, absolutely please get in touch. This is the kind of thing, the kind of ecosystem we are building. This is the kind of businesses and institutions we have been in touch with so far, we've worked with so far. And this is the last thing I want to show you. This is the kind of life of a product management. I don't know if you've seen it before. If not, have a look. And I should have put contact in the same slide so I could read it out. But I think you got the gist. So you really need to learn how to communicate. That's basically the key lesson here. Make sure you completely understand your customer requirement, freeze them, don't change them under the way, and hopefully what the customer really wanted is what you understand that they wanted in the first place, and you're not going to end up in this situation. And these are my contacts. Thank you very much.